Okay, I'll get started. So, hello everyone, and thank you for joining the TRANSECTS Student Advisory Roundtable Speaker Series presentation for this month. My name is Chloe Canning, and I am a START advisor and also a TRANSECTS research assistant. Today, I'm joining the Zoom call from Treaty 6 territory and the homeland of the Métis in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada. I'll ask that everyone can feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat and just let us know where you are joining from. And while everyone does that, I'll just give a brief introduction to the speaker series and to our speaker today. So the speaker series is an opportunity to share knowledge, experiences, and ongoing work in transdisciplinary research from around the world. Our goal for this series is to connect those of us working in a transdisciplinary space to each other and to learn from one another. Speakers can be, for example, professors, practitioners, or early career researchers. And I'm really excited to introduce our speaker for today, Kwanele Siyengo. So Kwanele is a TIL and TRANSECTS peer mentor alumni. She has been fortunate enough to be in the TRANSECTS network for 3 years now, and it has truly shaped a huge part of her transdisciplinary journey in her personal as well as in her professional life. Although her transdisciplinary journey has not been a smooth one, it has been one that has connected dots and lines along the way. Kwanele has a passion for ecology and a strong natural science background from her undergraduate honors year. Although she enjoyed this work, she knew something was missing. During her master's at Rhodes University in South Africa, things took an unexpected but transformative turn when her work focused on social learning for catchment management. This shift was very intimidating, to say the least, but participation in the first mini-till cemented her confidence and affirmed the path that she was on in many ways. Kwanele has since embraced transdisciplinarity in most of the things that she does and is involved in. She has a deep passion and appreciation for platforms where science education, youth mentorship, and community engagement meet. Kwanele is also an advocate for self-care through her learnings from the TILs and has since woven these lessons into her personal and professional life. These attributes made her the perfect fit to be the first peer mentor in the 2024 TIL. In this role, she had an incredible time sharing her learning, navigating an intercultural space, and meeting shared responsibility holders doing amazing work in the Mount Arrowsmith Biosphere region. Currently, she works as a learning associate with the small-scale communal farms, where she continues to practice and promote transdisciplinary approaches. So Kwanele is going to give her presentation, and then we will have some time for discussion and questions at the end. For this speaker series, we have enabled the Q&A feature in Zoom. So please feel free to leave your questions there or to raise your hand. And I will help to moderate our discussion. And then I'll just say again, just to make sure that we keep our cameras off just for connectivity and everything. So with that, I will turn it over to Kwanele.
Thank you, Chloe. That was so nice. Hi, everyone. My name is Kwanele. Please let me know if I stopped being audible. I was talking to Chloe earlier. My laptop has decided an hour before this that it's going to start acting up. I am joining from South Africa in a very small town called Kokstad, which is like the most southern tip of KwaZulu-Natal, one of our provinces. I'm very excited to be here today, very excited to see familiar names, and to just share very organically, my journey to where I am today. So I will also switch off my video. I was just proving that I'm real, I'm here. And Chloe, with your permission, can I start sharing my presentation?
Absolutely. Please go ahead.
Okay, let's do this. Can you confirm if you can see it?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. Should I start, Chloe?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, hi everyone. For those who don't know me, my name is Kwanele Siyengo. And like I said at the beginning, I currently reside in South Africa. currently, because maybe not forever that I'll reside here, but I am from South Africa, born and raised here. I have an ecological background for my honors, which I'll talk about briefly in this presentation. And I also have a master's from Rhodes University that is in social learning. So I'm very excited to share this journey with you all. It's a very relaxed presentation. I struggled to put it together because I didn't want to be like too professional or focusing on something too much. So it's gonna feel like we're all having a conversation, which I hope will land well with people. And yeah, I'll get me started. So transdisciplinarity, what a big term. And this is something that I've always thought of when I first heard the term. You know, I was so intimidated by this term. I didn't know what it was, first of all. And I think throughout the years and through learning and through being in different spaces, like I say here, I've grown to be comforted by, knowing that I started to embrace transdisciplinarity. I've grown to have a specific conceptualization of my TransD journey. I've grown to be able to answer questions when they are asked. But like I said, it's not always been the case. My journey is one that has been fuzzy, like my title suggested. It's had its up and downs. It hasn't been linear. And I think this is one of the lessons that I share at the end that, transdisciplinarity is not a linear journey. And I think it comes up a lot that it's not a linear journey. It can be quite difficult. It can be quite uncomfortable. But I think once you start getting it, it's very fun. It gives you so much confidence in who you are and the way that you work. And hopefully, this is going to be something that comes out as I share this presentation. So, in this talk, I hope everyone gets to know me a little bit better, like even the things that you haven't heard about me. I hope I can paint somewhat of my general journey, but I also hope that I can map out my TransD journey and end with where I am now and share a few key lessons within my journey and what I think has been particularly shaping, has been a pinnacle, and has been somewhat of a guidance to where I am today. Um, so today in South Africa actually is Heritage Day. I should be wearing my traditional cultural attire. I just forgot. So yeah, it is a public holiday today, and it's where we all embrace our cultures, our heritages, where we come from, and we appreciate it through dressing in different South African cultural clothing, eating our different cultural dishes. And I thought that would be nice to bring up, and that's why my first slide here is titled using my own language, which is isiXhosa. And I think it's a very good way to start a TransD talk. So yes, this is titled Imvelaphi Yam. So my background directly translated. I started my university journey in Rhodes University. And for those who are not familiar, Rhodes University is in the Eastern Cape of South Africa. And quite a lot of TransEx partners are affiliated with Rhodes University, as well as I am. I did my undergraduate in Rhodes University from 2016, and I majored in environmental science and geography. I decided to take the environmental science route when I chose my honors because I had this deep passion and deep yearning to do ecology. I was always imagining myself with, a bucket of soil behind my back with a spade, trying to test for your soil density, your porosity, this and that. That was where my passion lied. And quite frankly, I was always so intimidating with working in spaces where I would bridge the gap between people and nature. So I always was comfortable with just being in that ecological space because I think for me, I was scared of being out there. And I don't even know why, because a lot of people would often tell me, you're so talkative. But um I wasn't acting, I wasn't thinking in a transdy way. I was very focused and narrow-minded in the way that I was focused, which is not wrong. It's not wrong, but it's just the way in which I was doing things, I would have to say wasn't a very like transD, even inter DUA actually. So yeah, in this slide, I have my title for my honors project, which was variation in soil recovery at microtopography level in old fields, targeted for ecological restoration. So it's very ecological. I did not speak to people in my honors research. It was solely me dealing with soil samples, testing soil samples, going into the lab and presenting the results of those soil samples. So yeah, and I thought this was, the way in which I was destined to be. I was like, I'm gonna go get a job. I'm probably gonna be a soil scientist. I'm probably gonna be in a lab for the rest of my life. And little did I know that my life was going to take a very different turn. And a turn that I will always appreciate because I wouldn't be where I am today had I not embraced the turn that my life took. Um, During my honors year was COVID. And as when I finished my honors year, I decided that I would take a break, just give myself time to introspect, give myself time to gather myself, to see if the journey that I was on in that time was something that I wanted to be doing. Um, and this is when I started to feel somewhat stuck in the ecological field because during this time as well was when we couldn't go anywhere. We were stuck indoors. I couldn't even go collect my honors samples myself. I had to use samples that were collected by my supervisor. And I think this is where I started to do a very deep introspection because I started to feel too comfortable and I started to feel like there was more beyond this that I could have been tapping into. There was more beyond this that I could have been exploring. And I wanted to move from this ecological realm, yet in the same breath, I was very scared because sometimes comfortability is nice. Sometimes comfortability is what it is. It's comfortable. It's a bubble that you're in that you don't want to step out of, and it's just so difficult to see yourself out of it. But fortunately for me, I met a lady at Rhodes University called Jessica Coburn, and she's also a part of the START network. She's just probably been taking a break for the past few years, but what an amazing lady who came to me and was like, Kwanele, what is it that you want? And she had a few master's research projects that she had gathered, and she had asked me if I wanted to explore these. And I was like, no. At first I was really like, I do not think that this is for me. I'm not confident enough. I'm not, speaking to people in a non-professional way, I'd call it, is very comfortable for me. But now going to someone and speaking to them for my master's research would be very scary, would be a very scary thing. And beyond that, she started telling me about transdisciplinarity, and it made it even more intimidating because it was such a difficult thing to come to terms with, and it was such a difficult term to conceptualize, and it was such a difficult term to conceptualize, especially in the South African context where it's not, I would say, if you're not in academia, it's not something that is widely out there. Even in the departments that we are in, especially in the environmental science department, I think it's gaining traction, which is amazing. But in the past, hasn't been something that people are particularly excited to talk about, or people are particularly confident to even talk about. So this is where I would say TransD trickled into my life. I started to explore the possibilities and the opportunities that would come with me doing the masters that Jess brought to me. And I gave myself time. I gave myself a lot of time before I actually decided that this is something that I wanted to go into. I weighed the pros, I weighed the cons, but in true TransD style, whether or not you weigh pros and cons, you will still come across, I don't want to call them challenges, but you'll still come across, uphills and downhills in your journey. And that's something that I think is very beautiful about the journey as well, is that you can embrace the difficulties that come with it, and you learn from the difficulties. It's not a complete fence that you can't go over, but it's an opportunity for you to take steps over that challenge. So when this opportunity came into my life, I remember when I was still finding TransD a difficult concept to conceptualize, Jess had been doing a whole lot of webinars and a whole lot of talking on TransD, which is what actually increased my confidence. And even though I thought I'd never understand this concept, I remember her using the blender analogy, which is what I've added onto here. And that's what I think started to shape me understanding transdisciplinarity and actually like looking at it in the real world, because I often used to confuse it with interdisciplinarity. I often used to confuse it with multidisciplinarity, which it is similar, but it has a whole lot of differences. And basically, the blender analogy says here, um, so let me just remove this, from different disciplines and communities, blend their knowledge together to co-create solutions for real world problems. So basically, you're putting everything in there and it's working together equally to create this beautiful, different thing. And I think that's where I was like, this is for me. This is something that I would want to be involved in. This is something that would shape the journey that I was going to be. And like in true style, I would say a new Kwanele was born from this, because I think, it's cliche, but like it was such a transformational change within me, because I think this is where I got encouraged to explore, I got encouraged to embrace. And as I undertook my master's journey, it was truly exceptional. The way that I came out of my shell, I interacted with different, they'd be known as shared responsibility holders. In Canada and South Africa, they'd be known as um, different stakeholders. And it was quite the journey within my master's, because at some point I didn't think that I was able to do it. And I think the transdisciplinary researcher within me knew that I had to encourage myself every single day. I was in the field a lot of the times interacting with different people. And this was such a beautiful thing for me, because I got to learn so much, not only about my master's research, but I got to know so much about the people that I was working with. I got to know so much about the environment. I got to know so much about the work that is being done. I got to know so much about policy making. I got to know so much about legislation. It was like the blender analogy says, like a mixture of so many different things that would at the end produce a beautiful master's dissertation. So I completed my master's dissertation, which was called Exploring Social Learning Practices for Catchment Management. And I did my study in two catchments in South Africa. One of the catchments was known as the Umzimvubu catchment, and the other one was called the Olifants River catchment. And what was beautiful about my journey within my master's is how different these two catchments that I was working with were, and how different the interactions were and how different the responses were. And, this was like a lesson for me. But I think more than anything, it enhanced my positionality, it enhanced my reflexivity, but it also enhanced a whole lot of my hard skills, my, your respect, your discipline, your patience. Like I came out of these catchments such a different person to the person who was collecting soil samples in the past. I was able to be intentional. And I think that's one of the most important things when doing research in South African communities, is like the intentionality, is allowing the communities to co-create, which was a shortfall, I would say, in this research, because I had a research that came to me, in the form of, this is the scope of it. And I wrote it as a key lesson at the end of my research that yes, it's always great to do research, but it's also great to actually sit down and assess what is it that these catchments want. Do they want to explore their social learning practices? And if they do want to explore them, how would they want to explore them? So I think at the end of my master's journey, I was so reflective. I remember getting my feedback from the university, and I got a lot of time to think about where my shortfalls could have been, which was for me like one of the highlights, because you get to now reflect from the outside in and say, hey, actually I could have done this. And I think it was starting to cement, truly the kinds of qualities that I was starting to get within my journey, and I really, really appreciated that. And through my master's journey, I realized that, it was way more fun to bridge, you know, gaps between science and society than to treat science as a silo and to treat the society as a silo. And I really appreciated and enjoyed, doing that in the process. Um, and beyond my academics, I immersed myself even more because now I was enjoying I was really enjoying working with people. And I think this for me was where I needed to be. And I was involved in a couple of more things where it was a whole lot of learning on science, society, community engagement, intercultural spaces, multicultural spaces. I took part in the Minitil, which was in Germany, an incredible time and an incredible opportunity. And in South Africa, I was also involved in a program called HPW, which is called Habitable Planet Workshop, that brings university students from across the country for 10 days to learn about Earth system sciences, but in a way where exactly you bridge the science from you bridge the gap between the science and the people. It's place-based learning where students go on field trips, they teach each other, they teach communities, they go out there and they enjoy themselves for this 10 days. And it's a very reflective journey. So I also then decided to join a mini HPW with Putuma. I believe she's on this call, which is the exact same thing, but you take it to students in high schools, because I truly believe that high school is where you're shaped the most. And in South African high schools, sometimes, especially in townships, you don't get these opportunities. And it's always so nice to immerse yourself in a journey where you can teach others about something that they would have otherwise not been able to get the privilege to learn about. So this for me was also a part of, the beautiful part of the journey, to have learned something like this in the things like your mini tills, in the things like my masters and things like university, and go and translate that knowledge to, students that are still in school, who will probably also remember this for like a huge chunk of their lives. And this was also a part of the things that shaped my learning, shaped my journey. And um, I, 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 I don't even have the words to describe the incredible gratitude that the learners that we worked with had. After being with them for a few weeks in this mini HPW, they are connected to, practitioners, they are connected to people that are in academia, where they are able to ask questions, they are able to see the world beyond, that classroom that they have. So this was another one of the opportunities that I believe shaped my TransD journey. And I believe that community engagement is something that, now that I understand transdisciplinarity, I have a calling for, and I really enjoy. And I think I really like that it's part of the journey that I'm on. So yes, these few things that I've talked about, because I do not want to talk about things for more than 30 minutes, are amongst some of the things that were game changers in my life. I believe that I'm here with the confidence that I have, with the skills that I have, because of immersing myself in those spaces, because of doing that master's, dissertation, because of being connected in the TRANSECTS network from the beginning, from being in the Minitil. This is where I feel like I've found confidence, I've found belonging, because that's where you get to see how different perspectives, different knowledge systems, different cultures, different ways of doing are integrated, and to create something beautiful, to create different knowledge forms, to create different outputs. And I really, really do enjoy the co-creation. I really do enjoy the collaboration that comes with it. And I highlight collaboration here because I think it's been so key. I would say I started my TransD journey when I started university, but obviously we weren't terming it as that. But ever since, my honors slash masters year, I've seen the value of collaboration so much in my life. And I think it's truly played a big role in me being where I am today, and with me moving from the fuzzy at the beginning to where I am now, which is still fuzzy, but it's fuzzy with a bit of understanding. It's fuzzy with a bit of confidence. It's fuzzy with a bit of appreciation, which is something that is really nice. So embracing TransD for me has been exactly what was in my bio, looking at youth mentorship, looking at science education and how do we, communicate the science education to people in ways that matter? How do we bridge science education and make sure that, it's appreciated. It's an art form that is appreciated by people, as well as community engagement. This is a big passion of mine. And these three things at the interface just show how much things are not linear. It's full of zigzags, but they always have a way of connecting and they always have a way of working together when they work together. And beyond these things that I've talked about, there were continued pinnacles in my journey. And one of the most exciting ones in my TransD journey would have been the peer mentor role that I was involved in. I was a peer mentor in the 2024 TIL, which was held in Canada. And this is where students came together from across the world and shared learnings. And I was there, a part of the people that were supporting these learnings, supporting the intercultural collaboration, and just overall being there for the students. And I truly enjoyed I truly enjoyed being in that space. And I think it was so important and it was so valuable to be there with, 18, very bright-minded students that were yearning and very curious in that space and very intentional. Because I spoke about this intentionality at the beginning that I think it's very important to know, what you want. And even if you don't know what it is that you want, but doing things in the way that matter. And I think this is what I saw and I took away from this journey as being a peer mentor is that I could observe that there was a whole lot of yearning for learning, even from myself. You know, um, Being in Canada for 6 weeks was incredible, but being in Canada for 6 weeks, supporting the research that was being done with the Tillies was even more beautiful. And also being with the Mabry staff was just amazing. So I really enjoyed this, but more than enjoying it, I think my key takeaway here was that, you know, you you can do whatever you put your mind to. For me, if I reflect back, if I put myself 4 years ago or 5 years ago, I would have never been the confident Kwanele who would have applied for an opportunity such as this one. And now, if another opportunity came up to, even go to a bigger conference, I'd be like, yes, I would absolutely love to go because I've gained so much confidence. I've gained so much, understanding of myself and I'm so reflective. I'm so understanding of the outside world. I'm self-aware as well because of this opportunity. So I really enjoyed this role and, being in touch with the Tillies before the till, after the till, and I hope that I'll be able to be in touch with a lot more of them, even beyond now, with all of the other collaborations with START, with other, opportunities that are coming up. And I think it's something that I will always appreciate in shaping who I am as a person. And being given such an opportunity just shows you that you can be whatever you want to put yourself to. You must not be shy, not be scared to put yourself in positions where you can be called in a room that you did not expect to be in. So I really, really enjoyed the peer mentor role. And beyond that, I really appreciated the opportunity to be in that space and hearing that people had fun. And we didn't have a lot of hiccups, which was great. But I think it was just a really nice collaborative effort from the Mabry side, from the TRANSECTS side, and it came together very beautifully, and I really appreciated that. Um, and my key takeaways from the things that I've listed is one, the importance of always being intentional within your TransD journey. If you want to learn, learn. If you want to do something, do something. The importance of being reflective, the importance of journaling, the importance of self-care. That's something that I advocate a whole lot for ever since I've been to the tills because it's something that the mentors within the tills instilled in us. And had it not been for them, had it not been for the spaces that I was in, I would not have been the person that I am now. I think Chloe still remembers me calling people for journaling every single week, um, because it opens you up to a whole new world of thinking and a whole new world of doing. Um, learning to be uncomfortable, even in the learning to be comfortable even in the uncomfortable, which is what I think I did right at the beginning. When I decided to do that master's, I knew very well that it would have made me very uncomfortable. I knew very well that it was not my type of space. I knew very well that it was something that I was going to struggle with. But because I told myself that I was going to be intentional and I was going to do it, and I think that's what transdisciplinarity also embodies. I did it anyway, and I came out on top. Because sometimes we tell ourselves that it's too difficult. We tell ourselves that I can't do it. But who says that? You haven't tried. How do you know that you can't do it? And the last takeaway in my journey here is always being there, sometimes just to listen. You don't always have to speak. And this is something I think some of the Tillies within my peer mentoring journey really appreciated. Sometimes you just need to allow people the platform to, vent, allow people the platform to talk, and you don't even have to respond to them. And that's something that is also very important. And I've seen, be a very big thing in my life currently. And then obviously we get challenges or opportunities for growth in the journeys that we're on. And some of the opportunities for growth that I've seen in my journey is, allowing for courage. Because sometimes I would have seen that I would lack courage, but, taking a page from all of the people that are already practicing transdisciplinaries books, like i.e. Jess Coburn, your Kira, Kotze, your Maureen's, allow for yourself to grow in that way, looking at other people's journeys, taking a leaf out of their pages. I think that helps a lot. Number two is learning and unlearning. There's a lot that you'll think is the way of doing, and sometimes it's not the way of doing. So I think unlearning has played a very big role for me, knowing that this is how you speak to a community and not this. This is how you go into a meeting and not this. As opposed to what because you were in a bubble, but now you're out there in the world. I think unlearning has played a significant part of my learning journey as well. Other opportunities for growth is, navigating different intercultural spaces, because they are never truly the same. Sometimes you tell yourself that you'll go into these spaces, you'll find similarities, but it's never similar. So for my journey within the Habitable Planet workshop and being with people from different cultures was truly different from being in the Minitil. So you allow yourself to think about how to navigate these intercultural spaces, what is good and what is not good, what works and what doesn't work, and in which context, because contexts are very different. And that's a part of something that you always have to think about, is that no two contexts are the same. And moving forward, the importance in, building relationships in this TransD journey for me has been key. Networking, going into spaces and making sure that you are speaking to people where you'll still find yourself in those spaces, building relationships, going into things like START and building, relationships from the ground up, creating impact beyond academia. I think most of us are doing a master's or a PhD or something like that, but like even in the outside world, I think it's very important, speaking to practitioners if need to speak to practitioners, going to, spaces where you'll meet indigenous communities, for example, being with them, learning from them, different knowledge forms, different perspectives is very important. And as well as like always thinking about, your personal growth together with your professional growth. And I think most of us always think about the professional growth because we are trying to reach certain targets, but also how are things that you're doing in your TransD journey impacting or affecting you in the personal? And I think this is something that I've reflected a lot upon being in this TransD journey of mine. Um, and today I would love to call myself an avid, not avid, but I think I've really truly like grown into my role in TransD. I'm currently a learning associate at a company called Meet Naturally Africa, and we work with communal farmers, small-scale communal farmers for rangeland restoration. And within this, I'm practicing transdisciplinarity daily. And I think it was, again, very intentional of me to do work which, was related to what I have, for so many years now, like immersed myself in. I am a learning associate, which means I work with research and development opportunities, which means I work with trainings and workshoppings. And I think what has been important, particularly for me in the work that I do, who's to view the farmers that we work with as co-creators and co-researchers, because I think in the work that we do, sometimes we often forget about things like this. And in the companies that we work for, we often go into these spaces and we demand or we impose. And my lessons and my learnings in my journey has taught me the importance of co-creating, the importance of co-researching, the importance of bringing different people's voices. And that's exactly what I've tried to do in the role that I'm currently in, is bring farmer voices and their presence into, excuse me, into the work that we do. What do they want? Obviously we want you to be restoring your rangelands, but how do you want to be restoring your rangeland? How are we going to be intentional about, the work that we do? I think there's a lot of top-down approaches that we deal with in the world. So just something as small as being asked, what is it that you want, means and goes a long way. And that's something that I think in who I am as a person have tried to really bring through. But also other things that have been really important, obviously, are those green skills that I talked about, like the ways that the different villages have, different ways of doing, just small things like learning how those different ways of doing are, small things like when you're conducting interviews, what is it that you do and what is it that you don't do? How do you make that person feel listened to? How do you bring your respect into the space that you work in? And a part of the work that I do is that I also manage a bunch of amazing people that we call local field officers, who also are in the research and development space, who are from the villages. And I think, again, it goes with knowing that obviously, if we want to do a needs analysis, bringing someone in from, for example, Rhodes University to come in a village that they're not familiar with does not make any sense. So why not just bring in people that already live there? They know what the situation is. They know what the people that live there want and need. So I think that also for me was something that was very important, and was something that I think will mean a lot for the work that we do, and will also go a long way, because it's very important to know what it is. And it's also, playing a big role in like the economic aspect of it, is that if you want to come and do work, rather than to get people from the outside to come do work for you, get people from the locals, they get a salary as well. It also like is very dignifying, according to some of the farmers that we work with, which has been something so nice to see. And like the reflections from the ground has been amazing, because these are they are children that are getting employed, but at the same time are doing work that is very intentional, that is very helpful to them as people that stay in those villages as well. So yeah, key lessons along my trans way, I think it's going to be very like very, oh, I forgot the word for it. Very prominent, not prominent, but it's very evident through this presentation that my transduced journey is still a very messy one, but I think it's a very organic one. I take life as it comes. But I'm very appreciative of being where I am because of it. It's not been a linear journey. It's been zigzagged, like I said before. It can be very uncomfortable because sometimes you don't know where you are, where you're going. Um, it needs courage, it needs intentionality. It's very messy, it can be very messy, but I think it comes with so many rewards. And I've seen with the opportunities that I've gotten along the way, I've gotten opportunities to be on start, I've gotten the opportunity to be a research assistant in TRANSECTS, I've gotten the opportunity to go to Canada. My first trip outside of the country was because of my TransD journey. And I think that comes with some of the rewards that I've gotten to see and realize. It requires a lot of patience because sometimes it will frustrate you. But I think what's important there is to always just like keep on going, the importance of within academia, outside of academia, now I'm in the practitioner world, to always take care of oneself, to always take care of others, self-care, ethics of care, everything that has to do with care is very important to me and the work that I do. And to always take regard and take in regard connecting people and nature in a very like healthy way. And what would Kwanele do? So this is a slide where there's a saying that says, "What would Jesus do?" People that are religious. So I say, "What would Kwanele do?" And I think this is for someone who still isn't sure in where they are in their journey. So I would say, um, excuse me a little bit. Okay, sorry, I'm back. So what would Kwanele do? I would definitely take a risk because I think I took a risk that was very take risks, build relationships, be the outlier sometimes. I think being the outlier pays off. And ask when you need to ask because journeys are not the same, and sometimes you just need to ask to get to where you need to go to. But basically, in closing, I'm a very proud TransD researcher who I believe speaks and breathes transdisciplinarity now. Obviously, I'm not perfect in it, but I think I've learned so much along the way with the mentorship that I've gotten, with the opportunities to attend, the Indabas, conferences, and workshops. I think I've been very grateful to be in those spaces. And just, yeah, the world now that I'm in this space would be very miserable without being exposed to transdisciplinarity. And I think it's completely the future of it's the future, and it's where we all should be like striving to go towards. And I think I really hope more young people are in spaces like this, or strive to be in spaces like this, because doing work that is impactful and that makes a real change is where I think we should all be looking towards. And I mean, a lot of work and all work has potential for change, but particularly I think transdisciplinarity is just so great and so has so much potential for us to tap into as the young early career researchers, and it's important for us to take it up. And I hope each and every one of us in this call today will be able to reflect on where we want to be, where we want to go, and how we want to embrace our journey now and into the future. Thank you so much for listening to my blabbing. I was a bit nervous as well, so I think I lost a whole lot of my notes, but I really hope like it became clear on how in the past 3 to 4 years I've been in and out of the spaces that I've been in and out of. I think next time, Chloe, when you invite me, I'll be a bit more prepared. But yeah, I just appreciated, that people can come and listen to a young girl like me from South Africa about her journey. So thank you so much. And I will give you the opportunity now, Chloe.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kwanele. That was a beautiful, beautiful talk. I'm just seeing the chat now. Everyone, including myself, loves the "What would Kwanele do?" I know as a till 2024 alumni, Kwanele was my peer mentor, and that is something that, we thought a lot about, I think, even back then, because she's that knowledgeable. And I think we all really, really look up to her and will always continue to. So we do have a little bit of time, and I believe Quinelle is willing to answer some questions. So again, feel free to pop any questions you have into either the chat or into the Q&A format that we have. And if you want, if you're brave, also feel free to just put the hand up and ask Kwanele directly. So I'll give everyone just a second to add those questions. Oh, don't even need to. Jim, go ahead.
Thanks, Chloe. Hi, Kwanele. Hope you're well. I'll come straight in with the question. Don't you think there's a better name for all of this than TransD or transdisciplinarity? And what would that name be?
Thank you so much, Jim. Hello. I think definitely. Especially I think in different contexts. Um, Oh, it's a very interesting question, but I think the word itself is for me very, I think it's intimidating because it embodies things that you already are doing. So it's just like an umbrella term for what, is called a mixture of bringing different perspectives together, different knowledge systems, doing things in a certain way. So I definitely think that that would be something that would be good, even for myself. I think if it didn't come as this big, probably 12-lettered word, I don't know how many letters are in that word, it would have landed even better. It would have been less intimidating. But what that word would be is a very good question, and I don't know if I have an answer for it right now, Jim.
No, I appreciate it, and maybe I didn't expect you to have an answer to the question, but I was struck by your talk was very inspiring, and the things you spoke to just made me feel as though God, the word we're using is just not it, it isn't particularly accessible, and it doesn't really evoke many of the things that we think are great about TransD. And I
Mm.
think we need to come up with a better name.
Definitely agree, Jim. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Jim. Aisha, I see your hand up there.
Yes, thank you, Chloe. And good to see you, Kwanele. Thank you so much for your truly inspiring journey that you've just shared with us. And I also really took note of the what would Kwanele do parts. I think I'll probably be asking myself, what would Aisha do next time I find myself in a situation like that? But I wanted to ask, because I remember throughout the tail journey, we were encouraged to journal, and some of us didn't particularly understand the need. I do know for myself,
Mhm.
sometimes I write things down that I want to remember or like anything that's going on, but I don't necessarily understand the practice behind probably sitting down and reflecting and writing things down in, I don't know whether it's supposed to be in a systematic way. So I just wanted to find out how that
Mhm.
has really benefited you in your personal life, journaling particularly, and also
Mhm.
working with people. You've mentioned that there have been zigzags and it's a messy journey and all of that. How have you been able to deal, particularly when it comes to relating with people, and what challenges you may have encountered along the way? Thank you.
Thanks, Aisha. Also, very nice to see you. And thank you so much for these two questions, Aisha. I think with the journaling one particularly, I think I used to struggle with understanding why there was a need. And again, I think I'll bring my past supervisor, which was Jess, because she introduced me into that space. But I think I'm the one who at the end was like, I actually need to like take it forward. And I think there are very many ways to do like the journaling. I know within the till I encourage the writing, but not all of us will appreciate that same style of journaling. But I think the broader, more important role of journaling is beyond the self-care aspect of it, is it allows you an opportunity to gather your thoughts. And I think for you to think, like you said, it's a very reflective um task. You get to sit down and understand what it is that you need to do, what it is that you're doing, what it is that you have gaps in. And I think writing it down helps for you to have it down for when you want to always go back into it. But I think what I did appreciate in the till is that this particular sentiment was very vocalized, that sometimes people don't want to write when they journal. And I think that's also something that should be embraced as a part of, like, I can journal mentally sometimes. Sometimes I can journal via voice recording. I think that what's important is the core principle of it, which is trying to gather your thoughts, trying to put everything into one, and trying to actually like connect your own dots through the journaling. I think it's helped me a lot with that. It's helped me a lot with understanding where it is I want to be, and where it is I am, and how to get from where I am to where I want to be. But it's not going to be the same for everyone. And I think that's something that we should appreciate, that not everyone is going to want to think in the same way. Not everyone is going to want to do things in the same way. And that's absolutely fine. That's also embracing who we are, and the way that we work with. So for me, it's really helped me like really reflect on things, and really like work in a, like you say, systematic way. So yeah, for different people, I remember in the till someone really wanted to just speak into a recording, which is absolutely fine, because that's how you gather your thoughts. So yeah, I think the word journaling inherently tries to make us think that we have to like write things down, but I think we also have to like appreciate other forms of putting our thoughts into a space. So yeah, I hope I answer you, Aisha. And then the second one, which is working with people, which has been particularly difficult at times. And I think one thing that has truly helped me is learning from those that have worked the journey. I take really high regard into mentorship and into asking questions, coming into working with farmers, particularly now, which are older people, and which have different ways of thinking toward how I would think. It can be quite challenging, it can be quite difficult, but I think, I know Mzu, if any of you know Mzu, who's also in the TransEx network, he will always emphasize the importance of, getting that contextual understanding before doing anything or before doing any work. And I think that's what has been particularly important for me, is that every time I go into a space, I try and understand what the dynamics are, how things are done, what the cultural importances are, things like that. Like I just ask, I, go to someone who's walked the journey. If there's no one that's walked the journey, I try to do a whole lot of research. But even with this, it's always going to be messy, Aisha. I think you embrace the messiness. I think you will all, it will never be perfect. It will never be perfect. But I think what is important is to always have that patience, and is to always, like what I said, be um secure in or being like grounded in your humility, being grounded in, being able to provide a safe space for people, because then they will provide a safe space for you. But yeah, just embracing those spaces, and however they come at you, and then dealing with, the messiness in any way that you need to deal with it. So yeah.
Thank you, Kwanele. Thank you so much. I really
Thanks,
appreciate that.
Aisha.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Maureen, I see you have a question in the chat and your hand raised, so I'll let you go ahead.
Yeah, so it's the same question. It's nice to see you, Kwanele. And yeah, a really lovely presentation. I think hear from your personal experience has been really tremendous. You've talked a lot about the community side, and I'm just wondering whether you encountered any challenges when you were going through your program on the university side, and if so, how did you address those?
Thank you, Maureen. I experienced a whole lot of challenges, and I'm assuming, Maureen, you asking about like when I was doing my master's.
Mm-hmm.
I experienced a whole lot of challenges. I think, first of all, I experienced challenges with the methodology. That was like the first one that I would have experienced. I was not familiar, and the methodology that I was using. So one of the things that I was using was participant observation, and I particularly didn't understand how this would get me to, the end goal of having a dissertation that is going to be, so what to say, credible. And that's not even the right word to use, but I think sometimes people tend to downplay, some of these qualitative methodologies. And I think for me, that was very difficult when I got into it. And I think I often thought, who's going to want to read my master's when I tell them that all I did, okay, not all I did, but like one of my methods was sitting into meetings and observing how people acted and observing what they were saying and observing their body language. So the methodology for me was a big challenge, but through, like I said, being in the Minitel, where methodology was a big topic and we had like extensive workshopping on it. That's where I was like, oh, okay, it's not so much of a challenge. This is actually great. It's very credible methodology. It's very amazing. But also beyond that, I think number two, it's with the stakeholders or the shared responsibility holders that I was working with. Some of them were people in high places, like your directors of departments, um, practitioners that were in different spaces as well, in the NGO space, in the parastatal space, in the researcher space. So I think for me, this was quite scary because it was confidence that was a challenge for me. I wasn't confident enough to walk into those spaces and say, hey, I'm here and I'm going to do amazing research that's going to help, the catchment that you're working with, you're now going to know your social learning practices so that you know how to use them. So I had a big challenge when it came to this. I was often very shy at first, but I think I grew into myself while I was doing my master's. I think at the end of it, I was very confident. I was able to go back and present and say, hey, this is what I've been doing for the past 2 years, and these are the social learning practices that you currently have, but this is what you could have, and it would extremely help, when you're managing the catchment together. So I had a big challenge with being confident with working with the different people because I was intimidated. But over time, as my confidence grew, I think this was less of a challenge, and it was something that I was able to work with and again, embrace very confidently.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maureen.
Excellent. I think we have time for one more question. So Matsubane, take it away.
Thank you, Chloe. Hi, Kwanele. Nice to see you. I'm gonna switch off my camera now. So my question is regarding making the TDKs, because I'm just thinking about how self-care is a very important part of TD research because the work can get very exhausting. And I'm just wondering, when you go through your interview processes, how do you make the TDKs? Like, how did you, or did you even have to mention the fact that you are passionate about TD research and this is kind of your philosophy with the work that you do, and how did the conversation go?
Thanks, Matsobane. I don't know if I got the question correctly, but are you asking when I'm working with the small scale farmers that I work with and I do research with them, how do I make a case? If you could just repeat that for me, Matsobane.
Okay, so I'm just thinking how we live in a world that prioritizes productivity, and self-care and just regeneration isn't something that's put at the forefront. So I'm just thinking about how self-care is an essential part of TD research. And I'm wondering if this is something you touched on before you got the job, during your interview phase, and when they were starting to get to know you, your philosophies. Was this something you spoke about? I'm just wondering if TD is something you had to make a case for, or did this
Yeah.
just come naturally, and just self-care, how did that enter the chat?
Thank you, Matubani. I think both. I think it came very naturally, but I did make a case for it, even though I don't use the word transdisciplinarity in my life, if I'm being honest. I won't, I mean, yes, in this presentation, I'll call myself a TransD researcher because that's what I am. But like in my everyday life, I think I won't, that's what Jim was saying. Like it's not a term that I would call myself or use. So even in the interview, I wouldn't have said, no, I'm going to be bringing in my qualities as a TransD researcher. I think you are the TransD. I think um like who you are and how you make a case for yourself. I don't know if I'm going to answer this properly, but for example, one thing that I do know and I care about when we're working with farmers is, participant fatigue. And that's one of the things that I think I definitely like advocated for, all these different people coming into the sites wanting to know, wanting to do But that was something that I absolutely talked about a lot, which I think is a big part of self-care from the farmer's side as well. So yeah, I think both in a very natural way because that's who I am, very empathetic, but also like just saying specifically that these are some of the things that are important in the work that I will be doing or the work that we will be bringing into, the farmers that we work with. So yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for all of the questions, everyone. I see a few people have had to run away, but once again, I just want to get everyone to thank Kwanele again for sharing her time with us and sharing her knowledge with us. So yes, thank you again, Kwanele. You did a wonderful presentation. And thank you everyone for joining the September speaker series. Keep an eye out on your email because we'll be sending some information about the October speaker. So thank you, everyone.